The prospect of the Oilers playing in an all-Canadian division, particularly right now, is intriguing, given that most of the teams are good enough to be in a playoff position and maybe even win a round or two. And in the case of the Canucks, got past the first playoff round before losing to Vegas in 7 games in round 2. If you look at the NHL standings when the season was paused in March, you'll see that the 4 Western teams and the Toronto Maple Leafs were all within a few points of each other. If there wasn't a pandemic, who knows, maybe some of them go up and down the standings, and maybe some do or do not make the playoffs. But that and the bubble playoffs speak to how competitive things could be in an all-Canadian division.
Teams all seem to be coming out of their whatever rebuild phases at the same time. And I think that's what makes things exciting. You look at the Canucks and how far along they've come. Calgary's coming out of that rebuild. The Oilers are coming out of a rebuild. Winnipeg is still a strong team. They're kind of not necessarily rebuilding, but maybe reloading their team. So out in the West, it's pretty exciting because the teams are all good and the teams are all competitive. And I think that's obviously what makes it exciting. Out East is the same thing. You have the Maple Leafs, and the Canadians, I think, are further along than a lot of people thought. It'd be interesting to see where Ottawa is. Ottawa's rebuilding. They have a lot of good young talent on that team as well. And the Leafs are what they are. The Leafs are still there. They still think that they have the core to challenge for a championship. So I think that's what really makes an all-Canadian division really exciting. And it's even without fans, I think it'll be good to see the Oilers play the Leafs more than once or the Canadians more than once. And we've all been in the building here when the Leafs are in town or when Montreal is in town. It's just electric. There's an electricity and there's just an energy that you don't get with some other American teams come in. And I think when Vancouver comes in, it's the same way. When you play in Calgary, it's the same way, and Winnipeg. So to have that every night, I think will be really special.
You got a Canadian division. I think you can look, if you're a fan, your team, you're looking at it going, you know what, we're as good as the other teams. If you're certainly a Leaf fan, you're thinking, cripes, we can't ever beat the Bruins, so how far are we going? The competition will be really good, certainly with 6 of the 7 teams. Ottawa's going to rebuild, so I don't know how good Ottawa will be. But we've always said in the past, which Canadian team is the best, as the season's wearing on. But you can't really, Toronto and Montreal are back east, and Edmonton and Vancouver and Calgary are in one division, playing each other all the time. I don't think you could ever say, this team's the best, even if they've had a few more points because they're playing different caliber competition.
Keep in mind, if the NHL adopts the format that sees all the regular season games played within the division, that would mean a lot more high-quality opponents for all teams involved. If the NHL were to adopt a 50-game format, or somewhere between 40 and 50, that would mean 7 or 8 games against each opponent.
Now suddenly you're playing a team 8 times, playing the Calgary Flames 8 times now, and I think it changes because there's a huge rivalry there, and both teams are fighting for those playoff points. Those playoff points become so big now. And when you're playing a team 8 times, if you play Vancouver or Winnipeg 8 times, those are the big series. Those are big points that you're trying to take away from your rival. And another thing I've heard being them discussed is maybe you just don't travel and play one game. Maybe you travel and play a weekend series. Maybe you'll play on a Friday night in Vancouver and then on a Sunday the Oilers go to play out east. They'll play Montreal twice. They'll play Toronto twice. They'll play Ottawa twice and then come home. And so it's kind of exciting because when you have the same schedule year in, year out, sometimes it can get stale. And this is something different. And so I think it's something that the fans will embrace, even if they can't get in the buildings. I think the fans will embrace because I want to see the Oilers play the Leafs 5-6 times a year. I think that would be great. I think that would really kind of cement a lot of arguments of whether is it McDavid, is it Matthews, who's the best player in the league. I think I'd love to see the Canadians here 3 or 4 times a year. I think that would be really exciting to see. They want to see those teams come in here more than just once a year.
It's more of let's not leave it all on the table here, in 1 or 2 games. We've got to play these games 8 times. You're saying to yourself, okay, let's have this rivalry heat up as the season wears along. We can't, have it all on the ice in one game. One thing about it too is when you play a team more often, you get to know the other team better. If you're a writer or a hockey commentator, you have a better feel for the team playing the Oilers, what they got, what they don't have. It makes it more interesting and more fun.
Whether the teams are playing in a bubble or not, the expected TV ratings could be a lot higher in Canada, given that 1. Canadian markets, on average, follow their teams more closely than the American markets, and 2. The pandemic has seen a void in sports programming for fans to consume. And although the bubble playoffs that were hosted in Edmonton and in Toronto were not the ratings hit the league was hoping for, you'd like to think that absence makes the heart grow a bit fonder for what's been missing. After all, if it wasn't for COVID, we'd be almost 2 months into the regular season schedule.
I think in Canada they'll probably even increase, and I think that would be huge for sports and that NCBC to just have an all-Canadian lineup and have all Canadian teams every night. I think a lot of people would tune into that. You tune in to watch that. I don't know what they would be in the States. I think some of the issues of getting fans in the building is down in the United States. Some of those owners need those fans in the building to make things viable, to make things work.
And in some ways, it's almost too bad for the Oilers and their Pacific Division cousins in Calgary and Vancouver, and really Toronto and even Montreal too, to have to play in what you could call a stacked division, certainly a tougher one than the Pacific. Of course, you never know what a team may do any given season. There are always surprises, but odds are the Pacific would have played out a lot like last season, with the former California powerhouses going through a rebuild, and an Arizona Coyotes team that probably wouldn't be as good as it was last year, but again, who knows? There are always surprises. Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver all would have had plenty of chances to duke things out with Vegas for the top seed in the Pacific.
Yeah, it'd be a little unfair because suddenly now you've gone from a division where you had three kind of weak sisters in that division to a division where every team is strong, every team is building, every team is on the way up. So it'd be more difficult, but then again, you got to look at the situation where if you're the Oilers and if you want to be a cup contending team, you're going to have to play teams that are contending as well. And I think it helps you throughout the regular season to play intense games every night. So when it comes to playoff time, if you get there, then you know what it's like, as opposed to maybe kind of breezing through some games and having some weak teams in your division.